The recording will go to the cloud.
So then you'll get it then.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay. Admit all.
Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to Urban Devi. We're so January edition. We're so grateful and happy to have you all with us today. We see some familiar faces here. It's so lovely to see everyone. Wow, Manjwali Devi Dasi is here, and Lori and Sarah. So nice to see you. And Tiffany, wow, I haven't seen you in such a long time. My love to you. Many, many hugs. And Christina from France, Hannah, Sadhana, Krishna Drew is here. Hare Krishna. And we have another Rukmini here as well. Karuna Shakti from South Africa, Tracy, Lynn, Andrea is here. So nice to see you. We have so many friends here. Thank you all so much for joining. This is such a joy, such a great honor to have Sanga. I was just at a parade yesterday doing a Ratha Yatra with like thousands and thousands of people, all dressed as pirates, and very drunk. And I was just meditating on how, wow, there's all of these pirates and there's so many millions and billions and trillions of people in the world. And there's such a small group and there's so much darkness and so much. And there's this light, this light was coming from the kirtan, from the bhakti party, from the bhakti Sanga. And I was just meditating on how fortunate we are to have a spiritual practice, and to have each other's association and to connect and hear these sacred teachings. So we have a very special guest today, one of my favorite people of all time, Mondakini Devi Dasi. She is really a very, very special personality. She was born and brought up in Paris, which, like, what a beautiful place to be born and brought up. And yeah, basically, like, her and her two intimate school friends were really trying to find the meaning of life in different traditions of the world when they were young. So they were reading books on Buddhism and Taoism and Vedanta. And then in the summer of 69, she met the Christian devotees in Paris. And by the end of the same year, she was actually introduced to Srila Prabhupada in London. And by the beginning of 1970, she became his initiated disciple. Then this is like, woof, in 1971, at the time of the Cold War, Srila Prabhupada instructed her to go to Moscow to marry the first Russian devotee, Ananta Shanti Prabhu. A wonderful adventure began where she taught whatever she knew about the bhakti path to her young husband. Undercover, together they shared that hopeful message of love of God with the sincere Russian spiritual seekers. But after 6 years, still the government didn't give her the needed residential visa. Then Srila Prabhupada asked her to remain in Europe to serve. A new life started. In 1978, she got married to a French artist, Madhavendra Puri. Their preaching took them all over Europe, to Los Angeles, to the UK, South Africa, and Mauritius. The birth of their daughter brought them back to France, where both of them worked in the world to maintain the family. In the year 2011, Mondakini was invited to Russia to commemorate the 40th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's visit to Moscow. The link with the Russian devotees was immediately revived. And in the year 2014, she retired and ever since has been traveling worldwide, sharing her experience and guiding the youth in Bhakti Yoga. We cannot imagine what an exciting and blissful and meaningful and impactful life she has had. So thank you so much for being with us, Mondakini, and now we turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, dear Shampakarata. It's so, and I'm so happy. I'm also overjoyed to be with all the wonderful people of Urban Devi. And I was reflecting just to hear a little biography. It's like a whole life, in a few minutes. And it actually went very, very fast when I'm looking back. I'm feeling very grateful also to have been introduced to spiritual life and to be able still, despite all the trouble in the world, to have association of other spiritual seekers. That's actually a treasure of life, to be able to have the association of spiritual seekers. So that's our second session, and the title that dear Rukmini gave is Adventures in Russia. Last time I told you about my going there, my participation, but today, with your permission, we are going to discuss about the first devotees, the first spiritual heroes who actually were practicing and spreading a spiritual life, the tradition of Bhakti Yoga in the Soviet Union during, as you said, during the Cold War. And they faced so many dangers. Their life was threatened. Some of them died. Some of them lost their freedom. Some of them lost their mental health or their physical health. But they were so eager to understand who they were, what was the meaning of the human form of life, that they very happily in their 20s, they took this risk. And the people in Russia now are very indebted to these first spiritual heroes. They're kind of veterans, if we may say, because now they can practice much more freely spiritual life. Actually, I'm talking to you from Russia now. It's -20. That is quite warm for Russia in that season. And the spiritual life of the people there is actually melting the ice. So let us talk about these first spiritual heroes. Actually, not only in Russia, but all over the world, some people are persecuted for their religious faith. Maybe you have read that book. It's a book called Fire Under the Snow. And it's actually the narration of a Tibetan monk who was in prison for 33 years just because he was a monk by the Chinese forces of occupation in Tibet. So many people in the world are facing great danger for their faith. But at the same time, they're experiencing a great reward from the Lord. So last time we finished talking, explaining how I was my spiritual master, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, after 6 years, told me not to go again anymore to the Soviet Union. He told me, actually, Russia is not sure, but Europe is quite sure. So you stay in Europe. And Srila Prabhupada said that just before persecution began in the Soviet Union for the devotees, he probably had the vision of it. So at the time, I couldn't get the residential permit Srila Prabhupada wanted me to obtain to stay in the country, and I stopped going there. But the first, you remember we talked about the first devotee Srila Prabhupada met. His name was Anatoly, and he got a Sanskrit name. The Sanskrit name was Ananta Shanti. That boy, he he was one person only, he started to travel all over the Soviet Union and to spread the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he addressed specifically the intelligentsia. So all the artists, he met Solzhenitsyn, he met painters, movie makers. He addressed the intelligentsia, and it became so successful that the Russian government became frightened. So let us talk about what Ananta Shanti was doing. To give you an idea, one time two disciples from America decided to come to the Soviet Union. And of course, they didn't have a picture. They didn't know how to meet that boy, Ananta Shanti. They were just told, you will meet him in the park. So they really did not know what to expect. They were waiting, and they came up with a little trick. When they saw somebody young coming, they will come and they will pretend they had a big cone. So they would say, Hare Krishna. But nobody replied to that. So they were waiting and waiting and waiting. And at some point, Ananta Shanti appeared. And they didn't need to do Hare Krishna. He looked very bright. He had an Indian white shirt, and they met him. So he took them to an apartment where the devotees were staying. He told them, sit on the chair, and now you tell me everything about spiritual life, everything you have learned. You don't move until you have told me everything, because we don't know if you will ever come back. So they were introduced to the eagerness of the devotees in Russia. He was not very conventional. You probably all heard some classes on Bhagavad Gita or on the Srimad Bhagavatam, our Vedic scriptures. So when Ananta Shanti was coming to give a class, usually he didn't come on time. He came 3 days later. And devotees asked him, how come you come so late? And he would say, oh, time is eternal. What is time? And then he will start to lecture. He will take Bhagavad Gita. He will tell the students, listen now, Krishna is speaking. And he will go on lecturing for 7 hours non-stop. And when people got used to it, they used to come with their food, with their sleeping bed, and just listen to these very, very special, empowered lectures. He traveled extensively to all over the Soviet Union at the time, to the Baltic countries, and he met a lot of other spiritual seekers. And people very, very eagerly took up the tradition of bhakti. But one time, 2 other devotees came from America. But the teacher called Arikesh Prabhu came to Russia. And then the devotees stopped being very cautious. Ananta Shanti was very, very cautious. He knew the KGB had an eye on him. And he was very, very careful. But now the devotees were so happy to see a spiritual teacher coming from America. They started to make advertisements, and they were not very careful anymore. They rented a big apartment, and a lot of people came. But at some point, they didn't realize that the KGB had actually an office in just very, very close from that place they rented. So at one point, there was a big knock on the door, and it was actually the militians who came. And they took the name of everyone, they took the address, they took the two American devotees and took them back to the hotel and put them in a plane to go back to the States. And unfortunately, after that, persecution started. Because you may remember from last time, the Soviet government decided that three enemies. So you remember rock and roll, Coca-Cola, and the Hare Krishnas. So books, they were very were forbidden. Books on spiritual life were forbidden. Persecution began in a very rude way. They started to arrest devotees and to judge them in court, putting them in shells, putting them in kind of labor camps and in a psychiatric hospital. They will tell the doctors, actually, they are really sick because one has to be mentally sick to believe in God. And the charges in court was that devotees were harming people's life, telling them to be vegetarian. So Ananta Shanti, previously Anatoly, was the first one to be arrested. First, he was taken to prison. It was very hard and tortured. And then he was taken to a psychiatric hospital where he stayed for over 6 years. He had a lot of faith. He was very determined. And he should have died actually in this psychiatric hospital because they administrated a lot of experimental drugs that the body cannot really tolerate. That kind of drug, you cannot stay still. You have to move the body constantly because it's so uncomfortable. And also, you cannot keep one thought in your mind for very long. So when they saw that he was chanting the Maha Mantra or praying, they gave double dose of these terrible experimental drugs. When he was in prison, he recalled there were so many in the jail. They were in the room, maybe 20, 23. They could hardly move. They were not allowed to wash. They were not allowed to go to the doctor. The food was not at all good for the health. People were losing their teeth. And himself, he recalled that he was actually, when he was getting some water, every day he was washing one part of the body to try to keep clean. And that made actually the jail keepers mad. So that was a very, very terrible time. And sometimes visits were allowed. And he told the devotees who visited him, he said, just remember, try to surrender to the Lord, try to surrender to Krishna freely when you have time. Because if you have to do it by force, it can be so hellish. He had a very powerful experience in the prison it was a prison, very, very dark, very, very humid. There is a building in Moscow called the Lubyanka. When you visit Moscow as a tourist, it looks quite joyful. It's painted outside, but maybe it's not the same now. But at the time of the KGB, it was a lot of how do you say, floors underneath, very humid, very. That's where he was interrogated. And one day he just couldn't take it anymore. And he thought, I'm just going to tell anything they want to hear. Actually, what the KGB wanted from the devotees, they wanted the devotees to say publicly, to tell the press, this Hare Krishna movement is not good, it is harmful for the people. I deny, I completely deny. A little bit like Saint Peter feeling scared did, you know, when he was asked if he knew about the Christians, about Lord Jesus, he denied 3 times. So in that way, Anantashanti thought, I'm going to deny everything. I cannot take it anymore. But all of a sudden, something very powerful and extraordinary, very mystical happened. Lord Krishna actually appeared in the form of a verse in Bhagavad Gita. That beautiful verse about the soul. Maybe you remember that verse, that the soul is eternal, the soul will never perish. The soul cannot be drawn into water, it cannot be scattered or withered by the wind, and it cannot be burnt by fire. The soul will live forever. And when that verse came into his heart, it didn't come in the same way we read it, you know, sitting very comfortably, you know, on a desk with the Bhagavad Gita book. But it came as Lord Krishna himself, and it gave him so much strength, so much hope, so much faith. All his strength, spiritual strength, was restored with the verse. And he realized, actually, they cannot do anything to me. Even if they tortured me, they cannot touch me. I'm the soul, and the soul is eternal. The soul will never die. The soul cannot be tortured. And he went on for the interrogation with full faith, and he could tolerate it again. So all these years passed for him in the psychiatric hospital. It was very, very hellish. But when he was asked how he survived, he said that the spiritual master and the Lord were always present with him. That's why he never died. And at one point, time came when he was going to be released after more than 6 years. And they indicated to him that there was a kind of a change in the politics and in the policy of the government. And he was able to be free. There was a similar case of another devotee who got arrested. His name was actually Bharadwaj. That's a Sanskrit name also. He went through the similar hellish condition, and he was also in this kind of a cell in the jail, very dark, very damp. And there was one man in the cell with him, And he could never know if this man was actually also a prisoner or if he was there to see what he was talking about and report to the police. So he got interrogated and he came half conscious in the cell. And there was another person turning his back. And the person had kind of a blanket around his shoulder. And then he saw that person turn and facing him. And he recognized, in his vision, he recognized his spiritual master, our spiritual master, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had tears flowing from his eyes. And Prabhupada was saying, I never wanted that for you. I never wanted that for you. I never wanted that for you. So many devotees had a terrible experience there. Then there was some experiences were a little bit more joyful, but always mystical. For example, there was a devotee, again a Sanskrit name, called Panchachanya Maharaj. He was taken with some friends in a labor camp. It was in the middle of deep Russia, and people were quite simple in the village. So one of the chief of the village came to the director of the labor camp, and he said, I heard that you actually have some saintly persons in the camp. Can we actually talk to them? We need help. That man came and addressed the devotees. He said, you're a saintly person, can you help us? We, in the village, we actually have no rain, we have a drought. Can you help us? Because the culture is going to be spoiled and it's going to be hunger for everyone. What should we do? Tell us, holy man. And the devotee told him, actually, you should just cook a very nice vegetable dish and offer it to the holy persons in the village. And you should pray to the Lord. So that man was very simple and a good man. And he followed exactly what the devotee said. And after a few days, the rain started to pour and pour and pour. And the villagers were very happy. And they brought vegetable and a lot of gifts to the devotees. But then the man came again a week later. And he said, holy man, can you help? Can you help? We don't know what to do. Now the rain doesn't stop. And all our cultures, they're going to be spoiled again. Can you help us? What shall we do? And then again, the devotee said, you just have to cook a vegetarian dish and feed all the holy men. And you have to pray to the Lord. So they did. And again, the rain stopped. So these devotees were treated very, very happily in the labor camp. It was not the same for everyone. There was a beautiful story, and Rukmini, you might have heard it when we met in Russia, the devotees. It was one lady. Her husband was arrested and charged for the same thing. He was spreading spiritual knowledge, and he was telling people to be vegetarian. And the judge gave a very heavy sentence. He was arrested for more than 2 years, just for this. So the judge was very severe. Then the lady, she became, it was very hard for her. And she just decided to curse the judge. She in her mind, she gave a curse to him. So Rukmini knows, but maybe you can unmute some of you. And how do you think about a devotee, a spiritualist cursing someone? What kind of curse could it be? Somebody wants to try to guess? But do you think it's right to curse, for a spiritualist to curse someone? Who wants to try to answer? Let's see. I'm going to pick someone. Manshwali, can you unmute? Dear Manshwali.
You picked me. It's lovely to hear you, dear Mondakini. Well, cursing is a difficult one.
Yeah.
Because actually it's working with power.
Yes.
And it could be working with power negatively, which could cause harm, because the power can be used positively and negatively. So so the word curse I have some problem with, but you could pray that, you know, this judge becomes a devotee.
That's the curse you will give, if you would have to give a curse.
Well, I wouldn't call it a curse. I would call it a prayer, because curse is just too heavy for me. But I can understand, because curse has a negative connotation usually. And I can't deal with that, you know, but actually I can understand why she would curse, because she's trying to give something back, and, you know, but ask somebody else. Champatalata had her hand up. Ask her.
Okay. Go, Champak, you go. Thank you, dear Manshwali. Thank you.
Yeah, no, everything that dear Manjwali Devi said is just absolutely perfect. I was going to say the only curse that is spiritualist, like if, you know, if you have to call it a curse, Mandakini is saying she calls it a prayer, but if you have to call it the curse, the only curse would be what's best for that person's spiritual advancement. Like may Krishna make whatever happens in that person's life be best for their spiritual advancement. And it reminds me of a story when Srila Prabhupada was on a train, and there was this man who came up to Prabhupada, and he said, "Oh, Prabhupada, please give me your blessings." And he kept demanding, "Prabhupada, give me your blessings, give me your blessings." And Prabhupada, you know, wouldn't do it. And the man was just really insisting. But what really the man wanted was, he wanted material blessings. And Prabhupada said to him, "I give you the blessing that you lose everything." and he was like, no, Swamiji, not that blessing. But see, where Prabhupada was coming from, he was saying, I'm not going to give a person a material benediction. What I'm going to do is give them the blessing that they can come to Krishna consciousness. And so in that state, in that particular circumstance, that could mean for that man, because he was so attached to material things, that he would have to lose material things to take shelter of the Lord. That's not always necessarily the case. Don't worry, everyone on this call, you don't have to lose everything to practice Krishna consciousness. You can have everything and engage it in Krishna's service. But for us, a real spiritualist would say, I pray you can take shelter of Krishna. I pray you can become a devotee, and whatever is best for you to happen, for that, may that take place.
Okay, so I saw someone was actually from South Africa. You wanted to talk. Where are you?
Hare Krishna, Mondakini Prabhu. It's so lovely to hear from you and to see you here.
very
I was just thinking on, your question about a spiritualist cursing.
Yeah.
The first thought that came to my mind is, am I a pure devotee or not? Because, you have stories of Narada Muni, like where he cursed the sons of Kuvera, and, but it all ended up being part of Krishna's pastimes. So as a pure devotee, you can, quote unquote, curse someone, but your actions are entirely on a pure platform. And like, for me, who's definitely not a pure devotee, I don't see myself being able to curse someone for their benefit. So I should just keep quiet.
Yes. So actually, you are all right. All of you are right. So the beautiful lady, do you want to know what her curse was? Yes. She was very angry, although she was very, very angry. But she said, I just curse you that somebody who is very, very, very dear to you will become a devotee of the Lord. So, as you said, it was, in a way, it was a curse because she was very angry, but it was also a blessing. Meanwhile, her husband went to jail, and it was very hard for her. Even that judge, he was very mean. He sent some social worker to try to get her daughters out of a how do you say in English? Custody. That she wouldn't take care of her own daughters. But when that social worker, that lady came, she found the daughters so well behaved, so happy, that she understood it was just a political action, and she didn't remove the daughters. After two years, the husband came out of jail, and they were united again. They were originally from Armenia, and they lived in a place where there was actually some war between two states of the Soviet Union, and perestroika was slowly starting. So they started to distribute food to both camps. They were allowed to do that. They made some soup, and people were starving. There was no food, and people were queuing up to get the food. And in the queue, she recognized the church. The church was actually very humbly coming to get the food from the devotees he had put in jail. But more than that, many young devotees were joining. And there was one very enthusiastic young man. One time he had to do some service, and that lady, she needed to see his identity card. And when she saw the name, she saw that actually that was the son of the judge. Krishna had fulfilled her curse or prayer, call it as you like. So what we can see, because of their full surrender, all these devotees, they got some very strong power. Sometimes we can say even mystic powers. And they got really empowered in different ways, although they kept very, very humble. So that was the story of that lady, and which, there was a very dramatic story, very beautiful. You can get the book. It's in English. It's called Salted Bread. It's actually the story. You read, Tiffany? You read it? Who else read it? Somebody else read Salted Bread? Christina? You read, Christina? No?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. So that's the story of two young men who became a devotees in Armenia, and they started to print in clandestinity to print books, and at one point they got arrested and they got deported to Siberia. It was terribly cold, and one of the boy, his name was Sachisuta. One of the boys started to become very, very sick, but they wouldn't allow him to see the doctor. And he became sicker and sicker, but he never complained. His mood was always very joyful, and he was always sharing a spiritual knowledge with his cellmates. But his health was deteriorating, and he should have been liberated. He should have been freed in a few months, but his health was getting worse and worse. So one day, the book is called Salted Bread, because what the devotees had to eat was some very, very hard brown bread, not healthy, because it was not cooked really. And they used to take the inside of the bread, and they made beads, chanting beads to chant the Mahamantra. When I was in Alachua in Florida, one devotee called Kirtiraj actually showed me some of these beads they made. You know, he got 2 sets of these beads. So it's very moving. They were chanting on these beads made from the salted bread. And he had one, he was sharing the cell with one man. And he asked the man to get some white sheet for him. And he shaved his head. And he put some, the mark of the Vaishnav that we call tilak. With toothpaste, he put some tilak, some mark of the tradition of bhakti. And he started to sit in a lotus position, like a yogi. And he was smiling. So the friend left. And when the friend came back a few hours later, Sachisuta was still smiling. And the friend started to talk to him. But Sachisuta didn't reply. So he told him, but why you don't reply to me? You're smiling, you're not talking to me. Why you're not talking? And he came closer, and he started to take his hand. His hand was cold. Actually, Sachisuta had left the body. He had departed, he had died, but with a big, big smile on his face, like the great characters we read about in the Vedic scriptures. He decided at what time he was going to leave the body. And so he was a very exemplary, saintly character. So that was quite dramatic. And we also had one lady, she was a translator. She was talking to the labor camp, being pregnant. When the child was born, the child was taken from her. And the little child died actually in the labor camp. So we can see all these devotees, all these spiritual seekers, they were so sincere, and they had to face the greatest danger. And somehow or other, they passed the test. They didn't lose. They didn't lose their faith. They didn't lose their determination. and they got so much reward from the Lord. But it's actually very severe challenges. Often when we hear lectures by Radhanath Swami, he makes often the points that we shouldn't be a good weather spiritualist. For example, when we have good weather, when the sun is shining, when the sky is blue, we have often a feeling of happiness, of fulfillment. But sometimes it's big storms and it's all gray. The mind is not so happy. So Radhanath Swami is advising us to actually take the strength from the good weather for the time when we are going to be in big storms. Similarly, in spiritual life, the same principle is there. When we have, moments of good spiritual happiness, we can get that strength to meet the challenges of life. Because life, we have that proverb in France that saying that life is not like a long, still river. It's a lot of ups, lots of downs. And a true yogi, he tries to be equal in every situation of life. So, dear Shampakalata, I know we are going to have breakout groups. I don't know, at what time do you want to have the breakout groups with the question?
Yeah, so we were thinking we would do the breakout groups at 12:20, so we could do it now also.
Okay.
It's so nectarian listening to you. I mean, we have two choices, Rukmini and Mondakini. We can either do the breakout rooms now, and we'll do the breakout rooms from 12:20 to 12:30, and then people can share what they've discussed from 12:30 to 12:40. Or if you wanted to just speak for another 15 minutes before questions, we could skip the breakout rooms and do questions. What do you all think, Rukmini and Mondakini?
Tell me, how much time do we have just for the narration? Tell me so I will get an idea.
For the narration, like if you kept talking?
Yeah.
Well, if we skipped the breakout rooms, then what we could do is you could keep talking until like 12:40 latest, and then that would give us 15 minutes for questions.
Okay, but I don't have the same time as you. We have 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. You would have maximum 20 more minutes to talk.
Okay, so I will do as you wish. Well, what I can talk about now, it's what's going to happen when perestroika starts. With an example of very heroic people when things start to open.
I think you should keep talking. What do you think, Rukmini? I think we should skip breakout sessions so she can keep talking. You're muted, Rukmini.
Maybe she could speak for another 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, would that be okay?
And
then tell us, Mondakini, in case people don't know, what is perestroika? In case people don't know that word.
Perestroika actually is the time when the Soviet Union started to break down and when freedom came. I forgot the exact meaning, but let us ask Christina. Christina, are you with us?
Yes, hello.
Christina is from Russia. What is the actual meaning of perestroika in Russian?
Yeah, it was the time when everything was changed from the one where there was political change and everything. The time I was born, so it's like a reconstruction from one political system to another political system.
But the linguistic meaning of the word.
It's
What does it mean?
it's meaning exactly like if you take by word, it's just reconstruction.
Reconstruction, yeah. So perestroika actually happened in a very extraordinary way. One of our dear brother called Shyamasundar, another Sanskrit name, I'm sorry, he said that when Prabhupada came to the Soviet Union, it was actually the 5 days that changed the world. And it is true. And when the devotees were all in jail and in labor camp, another devotee we mentioned before, Kirtiraj started a big campaign called Free the Soviet, Hare Krishna. He urged all the devotees and the well-wishers to go in front of every Russian embassies in the world. And there was a very famous little boy. He used to come and sing in front of the Russian embassy a beautiful song, meaning, "You please, Mr. Gorbachev, free the Soviet, Hare Krishna." So it made a lot of movements that devotee Kirtiraj talked to the wife of the American president. I think it was Reagan at the time, Rukmini, if I'm not wrong. Huh? And he talked to the lady, Nancy, I think, and she talked to the wife of Gorbachev, of President Gorbachev. And soon after, the devotees got released, and perestroika started. We could see it in Europe. It was actually the end of the wall of Berlin. You know, Berlin was separated. There was East Berlin and West Berlin after the Second World War. And we couldn't believe it. So there was a wave of freedom at that time. And but still, it took time. So I'm going to tell you a few stories that happened during that perestroika, where devotees were still very heroic. One story is told by one of our spiritual brother, and his name is Niranjan Swami. He's a monk, a Swami. He has renounced the world. And somehow or other, he got linked with the Russian adventure. So he was told to go to Russia and to meet devotees there to help them. And he was told, like I was told when I went, be very careful about the tourist guide. They will report everything to the KGB. So you have to be careful. He didn't know who he was going to meet. He was just given a phone number. So he went as a tourist, he grew his hair, then he went as a tourist. And in the group, there was the Russian tourist guide, and there was also a guide taking care of the American tourist, an American guide. So he followed instruction. He waited at night when everybody was asleep, and he went outside to give a phone call to the number to contact the devotees. But then he realized he had no coins, no Russian coins. And he saw someone who was actually in the phone booth just aside. So he knocked and he wanted to ask the person for some coin. And he recognized the American tourist guy. So the American tourist guide asked him, "What are you doing here at this hour of the night?" So Niranjan Swami didn't know what to say. He was trying to find something to say. So what he could say was just, and what are you doing, you also, at this hour of the night? The American tourist guide told him, I ask you first, you have to answer me. And they went on like that. And finally, Niranjan Swami said, well, you know, I'm a Hare Krishna, and I'm trying to contact my brothers who experience a lot of difficulties. And the guide said, no, really, you are Hare Krishna. Niranjan Swami asked him, and you, what are you doing here? He says, well, I'm also there as it's a pretense that I am a guide. And he explained that he was actually from the Jewish confession, and he was trying to help other Jewish brothers and sisters who were also having difficulties. So they decided together not to tell anybody about their stories. And they made friends like that. Niranjan Swami got some coins and he phoned. The meeting was arranged at a special place, and the Russian devotee was going to be in a car, but there was no more explanation. So Niranjan Swami went, and he was waiting and waiting, and then he saw somebody in a car. Should I go? He thought, should I not go? Is he actually the devotee, or I'm going to get in trouble? After deliberating and waiting for a long time, he decided to go to the car. And he went to the car, and the man in the car looked at him. Then he lowered the window. He couldn't speak English, so he had a shirt. Then he showed his beads, his beads that are the sign of a devotee, to show you he was the devotee. Then he took Niranjan Swami to another meeting point. So that was the kind of atmosphere. And the last heroic story that is very moving, it's about a boy who was also distributing a lot of spiritual books during that time of perestroika. You know, the Russian people had been deprived of any spiritual books or spiritual information, and they were so eager. They were buying spiritual books, Bhagavad Gita or other Srila Prabhupada books like crazy. So much so that the devotees were often distributing books on a schedule of 24/7, going to mine, to factories, to even nuclear plants to distribute the books. And at the time, there was a young man, he was 19, his name was Vararoha. He was very, very enthusiastic in distributing that transcendental knowledge. He had a slogan. The slogan was book distribution, revolution. And very, very enthusiastically, he went everywhere. Especially went to a nuclear plant, and unfortunately, very soon he got heavily sick with cancer. He couldn't distribute any more books. He had to go to hospital, and eventually he just died out of cancer. At the end, he could just eat strawberry puree. And the devotee who is telling the story tells us how we took care of him. So that other devotee carried on the mission of distributing the books. And with his team, he came to a big, big factory. When he came, he introduced himself. I don't remember the name, but let's say Vladimir from the Vedic Society. When he came, the lady at the entrance became very, very excited. She said, don't move. I'm going to call the director. So the director came and he said, oh, very nice you came. So how many books do you have? We need sets of books for each employee of the factory. Yeah. Then the devotee was very, very surprised. It was about 300 employees. So they managed to get all the books, and all the devotees had to do was to sign a paper where the name of the employee was given. And it was stating that they got such and such books. So when they finished, they asked, how come you took all these books with such enthusiasm? And the director explained, actually, a year ago, when there was a lot of shortage of liquid money in Russia. And we couldn't pay our employees. And one of your colleagues came to us, and he was so nice, so enthusiastic. And he explained to us about this transcendental knowledge. We decided to offer to the employees these books. The deal was done and everybody was very happy. But when time came to pay for the books, we had a problem because we didn't have any cash. So we told your colleague, we will pay you with what we manufacture in the factory, and you can sell it. So the devotee asked, what do you manufacture in this factory? The boss, the director said, actually, we are producing a vodka. So the devotee said, oh, I cannot accept. Why you cannot accept? Because we have some regulative principles of life. We are monks. We don't drink alcohol. Oh, but you don't have to drink it. You can sell it. You will see. It will sell very, very, very well. The devotee had to say, I'm so sorry, I cannot accept. It's against our principles of life. And amazingly, that devotee was the devotee who died from cancer. So it was a very beautiful story showing that the devotee was so sincere that the Lord allowed him to carry on his service even after he passed away. He could carry on distributing the knowledge to help people who are suffering in this cycle of birth and death to get rid of the material sufferings. So that was my last story about the heroes of the Soviet Union.
Wow, thank you so much, Mondakini. That was just incredibly enlivening, inspiring, and nourishing. And it just really, I know for me, when I listen to your stories, it just, yeah, it's so easy when things are relatively easy to think, you know, that we have obstacles in our service. But when we think of what the faith and the conviction that these bhakti practitioners had in Russia and what they went through and the tests and challenges that they went through, it basically makes our so-called problems seem absolutely nil, and gives us such great determination to become more serious and more sincere, and yeah, to not to take every opportunity, to know that there is no obstacle, because the soul cannot the soul cannot be hurt by anything. There is no material impediments in devotional service. It's always an opportunity to serve. So thank you so much. We have
Thank
some
you.
time. We have some time now for questions. So please, if people have questions, if you could please type them into the chat for Mondakini, and then I will ask Mondakini the questions from the chat. Rukmini, do you have a question? Would you like to start?
Yes, I was just wondering, I'm on my phone, so I don't have a chat. But I'm just wondering, Mondakini, could you tell one or two stories of Brahmananda, or that
Yes.
that also that lady who was helping Brahmananda that we met, that very,
Yes.
could you tell a couple more stories? Would that be possible? I don't know, but if it's possible.
Of course, and you will help me if I miss some points. Okay. It was actually a very friendly and powerful devotee who passed away, unfortunately, recently because of COVID. In the time of the Soviet Union, he was printing you say in English clandestinity? Is it? He was not allowed to do it, so he was actually printing.
Yes, clandestine. Yes, clandestine. Probably a French word, right?
Yeah, it's a French word also. We say.
Uh-oh, is she frozen for others as well? Yeah, it seems like Mondakini.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully it's not her internet and she will come back shortly. Just give me 1 minute. I'm gonna reach out to her.
Should I try to tell a little bit of that story while you're reaching out to her? Would that be good? I can't hear you now. You're muted.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, let's see. I don't know if I remember so well, but they were taking this devotee who was printing the books in a clandestine way, in a secret way, that he was printing these books, and they were always trying to catch him, but they couldn't catch him. And at one point they had him, Champak, you're trying to get Mondakini back, yeah? So they had him under arrest. He was in a police car and he had handcuffs on, and they were taking him to jail. They had caught him. And this one lady devotee, she was so brave and so bold. Is she back? Mondakini's back? Whoops. Anyway, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Mondakini's back. Please, Mondakini, mute yourself.
Yeah, carry on, Rukmini. Yeah, because internet is very weak where I am. So now it seems to work. Can you hear me?
Now it's better. Yes, it's better.
But carry on.
Please, you go ahead because you'll tell it better. So your internet is back. Please go ahead. Any stories, Brahmananda or that lady, or any stories?
Okay, but if internet goes off, you carry on and you can answer the question with Manshwali. Okay, so where did you stop? with that lady, when the kid, she became actually in the room, and if they caught Brahmananda, if they inspected the house, they would have discovered the printing press that would have been terrible. And that a lady, she was just a lady, and the militians, they were ferocious. She started to scream at them and to beat them with her fist and to scream at them and say, why do you arrest that man? He's such a good man. And what is his family going to do? Aren't you ashamed? And she was so forceful that they let him go just for a few seconds, and he escaped through the window. She was so brave, so brave. Yeah. It was this kind of things that were happening all the time, very, very determined people. Srila Prabhupada called Russia, Rishya, the land of the rishis, meaning that it was the land of spiritual people. Of course, not everyone is spiritual, but yeah. Did you want to add anything, dear Rukmini? Okay.
Rukmini, you're muted.
And any other questions? Does anyone have anything in the chat or a hand up or anything?
There is one, yeah, there's two questions in the chat. So the first question is, Hare Krishna, thank you for sharing the story. Salted Bread was a book that broke my heart and filled it with faith simultaneously. I like the term you used, good weather devotee. I think there is also the bad weather devotee who turns to Krishna only when trouble. What is the secret to steadiness? This is a question from Rukmini Hridayal. Uh-oh, she froze again. Hopefully she comes back. I'm wondering, Rukmini, do you want to answer the question? You're muted.
I'm unmuting. Manjuali, what is the answer to that question? To not be a good weather devotee or a bad weather devotee, to turn to Krishna only when I'm suffering, or to turn to Krishna only when everything is happy? What's the secret to steadiness?
Well, in my humble opinion, steadiness comes by having a program, a daily program, having a prayerful attitude that actually by the will of the Lord only am I here. And it is only by his grace that I'm here. So please help me. And also taking the association of those that have, that support us in our journey, that have firm faith. Because actually, association, every one of us have times when we just think we've lost it. And, we can't, oh my God, my faith is gone, and, or that I'm challenged in some way. And I just think, oh God, there's no more sun, but actually what has worked for me is prayer, association, and having a day-to-day program that actually grounds us in the philosophy and grounds us in having, just kind of feeds our faith. Srila Prabhupada always said our spiritual life is like a plant. He called it the Bhakti Lata Bij. It's the creeper of devotion. And we actually feed that creeper of devotion by the water of bhakti, and by the water and the juice of the devotees association. And it says in Gita, and Srila Prabhupada taught us, people come to Krishna, some are searching for the truth, some are desperate, some are inquisitive. So there's so many ways in to Krishna's heart, and we all have different prarabdha karma from past lives and our different karmas in this life. So wherever we are, For me, it's prayer and taking the association of those who can actually support us, that value and that are there to inspire us, and we get that from the books as well. I don't know if that'll help.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sharing your heart. Thank you very much. Champak, there was another something in the chat. Another
Yeah.
question.
Every time we hear from Manjwali, you always emphasize the daily sadhana, the daily spiritual practice and prayer, and just seeing your consistency with that and your conviction in that, and how those two things have really just been an association with other spiritual practitioners, have just been the foundation of your spiritual practice, is so inspiring.
So if you're going to hang in there for 50 years, and it's up and down 50 years, but it's, it is by the grace of the divine and our master and the association of those that are questing together that kind of hold us and encourage us. Okay, that's enough for me.
Well, let's see here. There's an appreciation from Tiffany. It's for
It doesn't work anymore.
oh, Mondakini, we can hear you. How wonderful.
You know, they freeze. So it works.
Mondakini, we can hear you. Mondakini, can you hear us? I'm so sorry, everyone. This was an appreciation for Mondakini. Mondakini, can you hear us?
Go ahead and read the appreciation. That's beautiful. Everyone will hear.
Sure. Please accept my humble obeisances, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for sharing so many touching pastimes with us about the struggles and perseverance of the Russian devotees. Thank you for your beautiful entry in A Bond of Love, which is a book, A Bond of Love. If anyone is interested in reading it, it's stories by disciples or students of Prabhupada who are women, and their remembrances of Prabhupada. It's super inspiring and beautiful. Last November, I was at a festival with Russian devotees in Florida, and they presented a precious drama, and you were part of it. It shows how powerful Srila Prabhupada's Shakti and compassion was, that by spending such a short time there now, we see how many Russian people have now become devotees. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. So we have about 5 minutes. Are there any other questions from anyone that you could ask to Rukmini and Manjwali? Rukmini, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Oh, let me see. Am I muted? There was one story I remember hearing about the Russian devotees, that they had a bunch of boxes of books on the street, and it looked very suspicious. Those boxes were full of books, Srila Prabhupada's books, and there were these, Mondakini was using the word militia guys. So these soldiers were walking back and forth, and these books are very suspicious looking. And the devotees needed to get these books loaded into their van to get them off the street where they were sitting. And so one of the devotees so boldly started speaking very strongly to one of these soldiers, actually, and saying to him, "You're a young, strong guy. What are you doing just standing here? Don't you see that we need to move these books into this van? You're a strong guy. Why don't you help instead of just standing there doing nothing?" So the devotee was so boldly like that, asking this Russian soldier, who just got so intimidated, and the soldier just helped them move those books into their van in an amazing way. So that was one story that was amazing to me. And then the other story, I think, that I was sharing before, I think it was different from the one Mondakini was sharing, was that so this devotee who was printing the books, Brahmananda, he had many, many tales. And so he was in a police car. The policeman was arresting him, and he had handcuffs on his hands. And this lady devotee came up to the policeman in the car and said, "What are you doing? Don't you know that he is a family man? He has a wife and children at home. You take those handcuffs off him right now and you let him go home to his family. What are you doing? Like that, just very boldly. And this, again, this young policeman just got intimidated and opened up the handcuffs and let him go home. So, you know, these are just a few glimpses of these extraordinary, the hearts of these extraordinary people who are just so boldly longing for Krishna consciousness, longing for spiritual answers in their very difficult situation, and longing to share. Because a lot of times they were told, look, if you just do it at home, just don't share it with anyone. Don't preach. Don't share this with anyone. Just do it at home. And that was not all right with them. They wanted to share it so badly. They, so these are a few glimpses into this amazing history. Thank you.
Mondakini just rang me. They're trying to reload, she said, the internet. So she's patiently trying to get back to us, she said. Oh, I just wanted to share one thing. Brahmananda's Samadhi in Vrindavan is just next to Mondakini, Jamuna's, and just opposite Ananta Shesa. So they're all in the Goshala. All these Samadhis are at the Goshala in Vrindavan.
Tell us what a samadhi is in case someone doesn't know.
Okay,
what
a samadhi is like a tomb, or it's a place where we remember, where there's some garland or some ashes, and then there's a little house, but it's like a mausoleum like that. And it's a place where devotees can go and just bow and respect. So Mother Jamuna's samadhi is there, Ananta Shesha, I forget his name. Ananta Shanti. So it's Ananta Shanti. Then there's Tiffany's probably been there, right? And then next to it is Brahmananda. And when you were speaking about Brahmananda going through a window, Brahmananda was a very full-formed man. In incarnation, and the thought of him going through a window is quite amazing by the service of Srila Prabhupada. But actually, I just wanted to share that they're all together in Vrindavan, in the spiritual world, and we put the dust of their feet on our heads, because these dear devotees that made so much sacrifice in the early days to share Krishna consciousness, and did it with strong faith and determination and selflessness, and that is just like such an amazing example to inspire us all. So thank you. I just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Manjwali. And Mondakini, oh good, you're back. So happy to have you back. Basically, just everyone was just really grateful for what you shared and the time that you gave, and sharing the touching pastimes with the struggles and perseverance of the Russian devotees. And Tiffany also was thanking you for your beautiful entry in a bond of love, and for a drama that some Russian devotees presented in Florida that you were part of last November. So everyone's just thanking you so much for your time here. Thank you so much.
And I'm thanking all of you so much to allow me to be with you. Actually, association of a beautiful spiritual seeker is the gem of our life. It makes life meaningful.
Yeah.
Mondakini, you're in Siberia right now, aren't you? You're in Siberia?
I just left a few days ago, Siberia. I'm close, I'm in Ural. It's a beautiful forest, full of snow. It's yeah.
So Mondakini is always on a Russian adventure. So many prayers for you on your Russian adventure. Champak, you're going to announce about next month?
Yeah, so we have some announcements. If someone would like to join, we have 2 Urban Devi WhatsApp groups. One is just the links, like the WhatsApp group that has just the announcements about the Urban Devis. If you want to join that one, it's in the chat, the join link. And if you want to join one that has both announcements and discussion also, where people share different inspiring things, then you can click that one. And then to partner with Rukmini at Patreon, visit her patreon.com/Rukmini Walker. She has a beautiful Patreon where she posts beautiful things. And then our next Urban Devi is on February 20th, and that will be with Manjwali Devi, who is here.
Oh,
So we're so excited to hear from her. So please come back next month and invite all of your friends to join also. And thank you all so much for being with us today. Hare Krishna.
Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Mondakini, so much. Thank you for a few minutes of your time while you're on your Russian adventure.
thank you so much, dear Rukmini. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Manjuwali, also. Thank you, Champa, also.
Thank you, Rukmini.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.